Welcome to the Snobs podcast, everybody. I am your host, Mick Manhattan, and today I am super excited to have on the show Laura Smith and Kristin Mann, producers of the movies The Quarry and Into the Stars, which I've seen both and I love them. And they are out now for rent on Amazon Prime and other streaming services, so definitely go check them out. Laura, Kristin, thank you very much for joining me on the show.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah.
Well, I was just telling you guys, I'm very passionate about the position of producer. It's honestly, I think it's almost an underappreciated position, in my opinion. A lot of people don't see.
I have no idea what you're talking about.
Yeah, writers even more so. So I'll give writers that.
I often say that when it comes to producing, there's a reason you deserve Best Picture. They're getting that trophy. And I tell people that all the time. And I have a lot of young filmmakers that watch the show, and I was interested to know how you guys got started in the industry and what paths you took to lead you to producing.
I can jump in. Laura and I kind of had similar journeys. I mean, a little different, but I started out, so I was born and raised in Arkansas, where there's like little to no, film industry. And went to school there where there's no film school. So I, as soon as I graduated college, went to New York and did an internship for free for this production company. And then came back to Arkansas, and I got lucky and a film came through, which coincidentally Laura was working on. This was like 15 years ago when we met.
Our origin story.
Yeah. Yeah, 15 years ago. And so I hopped on to that movie as a production assistant. And from there, I just kind of, hopped around trying out different departments and trying to figure out what I wanted to do in film. And then eventually discovered that producing is kind of where my skill set, fit best. And so I produced a short film with some friends in Arkansas, and we did the festival circuit, and I was hooked. And so from there, just kind of worked my way up, and then started working for Jeff Nichols and Sarah Green and Terrence Malick as an assistant, and then worked for them as an associate producer, and then eventually was ready to start producing on my own.
Nice. Awesome. And and Laura, how about you? Is it a similar, I know you guys said you had similar paths to meet. Is that a similar story for you?
Yeah, similar in that I actually went to UCLA undergraduate, so I did study there. I went there knowing I wanted to work in film, and I thought producing was what I wanted to do, but I didn't really have honestly a grasp of what that meant, other than I liked the idea that it combined like creative with the business side of things. So I did a couple internships during college, and then right out of college, I started working for a filmmaker named Andrew Niccol, who wrote The Truman Show and wrote and directed Gattaca. And he, actually I interned for him my last quarter in school, and then started working as his assistant right when I graduated on a film. And then on that film, I met our line producer, who was married to the producer of Paul Thomas Anderson's films. So I jumped and went and worked for her as her assistant for a couple of years, and did Punch Drunk Love was the first movie I worked on. So I think, and then from there, kind of similar to Kristin, bounced around, I worked as an assistant to a composer for a little while, just kind of different departments, testing different things and just kind of learning. But ultimately producing was what I always wanted to do. So finally went and worked as an associate producer, co-producer for another producer as well, named Holly Wiersma. And she, I think through that, so Kristin and I, it was similar in that we both kind of worked for very boutique, in these kind of small production company environments that allowed us to really get our hands on everything and be a part of the full process from start to finish. So just kind of cut our teeth on set, really doing it over and over again on these indie films. And then eventually I hit a point where I was just ready to branch out on my own, which was probably about, I think it was 2008. It's been a while now. So I, at that point, partly, I hit a point, honestly, I was just kind of, you feel like you're giving so much of yourself to it. You just want to do it for yourself, either succeed or fail for yourself, kind of. So I kind of jumped out, not knowing really, how that's going to go. It's scary a lot of times along the way, because there's no clear path to get where you want to be, but you kind of just have to have faith, and this blind faith maybe that, you're doing what you love. And
I fully understand. That's how
like Kristin said, we had met many years ago, and then kind of came back together a few years ago, and now have partnered and are producing together, which is really gratifying in a different way to find someone you can just partner effectively with. And
that's awesome. That's really cool. And I love the, again, going over and watching your movies and things like that, especially more recent ones. I find there's a certain type of pacing. If I think like if there's a tone or a pacing that's similar in each. It's a slower, but
slow.
I do, but I love a slow burn type of movie personally. But is that something that you gravitate towards in story wise? Like, is that when you read a script, is that something that you appreciate more? Or is it?
It's an interesting question, because I feel like as producers, we're thinking about so many things, but as far as like pacing, it's kind of hard for us to predict how a director is going to do that. You can kind of like, you can read a script and obviously there can be a rhythm to it, and sometimes you can read it and tell, okay, this is going to be a little bit more of a quiet, like introspective, slower thing. But I can't say that I'm like drawn to films that are a little slower paced. I think it's more so like films that allow room like for you to really get to know the characters, and it's not just like dialogue and then move on to the next thing. It like allows you a beat to think about like what they just said and like what could be going through this person's mind and what could their motivations be. But having said that, I think too, like some of our next couple of projects that we're developing are a little bit faster paced as well.
Okay. Well, now, thank you for that. But with that, and maybe from the producing standpoint, when you're picking a director, does that pacing or that tone, does it help you like, okay, I have this person in mind, or I have this person in mind? How does that play into it? The story-wise, when you read it, is it, just the technical side of like, okay, I could see this person doing this, or?
Yeah.
I think, a lot of what comes to us is also like writer director are one and the same. So like the Quarry, To the Stars, not the case actually, but a lot of times it's this, the filmmaker that has written and is also directing. But I think when it comes to picking a director for it, a lot of it is about like when we read it, you kind of have a vision for it, and then kind of picking a filmmaker you're a fan of and what their vision, like when it's interesting to think of their vision on material. I think that's what's really exciting. Like you take someone like It Follows, for example. David Robert Mitchell had done one prior film, which is a very small kind of indie drama, coming of age story, but the thought of that pacing and style late onto a horror film was fascinating. So that was something that really like drew me into that one, for example. Or like Kristin brought Martha on just To the Stars.
Yeah, I think like there's so many different things that kind of you can take into account when trying to attach the director to a project. But like we did To the Stars with Martha, and she handled the period aspect of that movie like 110%, like with excellence, like top notch. Like there's one thing to do a period movie and make sure you're doing it correctly, but it's another thing to like have a director that's pretty obsessed with getting it right in every little detail. And so when Forsaken came to us, this is a project that one of our next projects. It's also a period piece, and it's completely different from To the Stars in that it's more even leaning more towards like horror, thriller. But it's period again, and it's a female driven cast. And like, she just handled those aspects of To the Stars so well that to us, it made perfect sense for her to do Forsaken, even though it's a very different movie.
Oh, I mean, that was beautiful how she handled it, and it felt so real. I watched the black and white version. That was what was available.
Oh, cool.
Winchester, and I loved it. I thought
that's great.
I like good old black and white movie, and I like when newer filmmakers kind of adapt that and use that as well. It could be a very good convention if used properly, and it would definitely also To the Stars. Now with that, I was wondering, it was Martha Stevens is the director of To the Stars, and Scott Teems is the director of The Quarry, and they're relatively newer upcoming filmmakers. How does them being newer, how do you go about as producers maybe leading or your guidance with them during that coming in? As you guys are veterans in the industry, how do you guide them along the way with that?
I feel like a big part of that jump. Like for both of them, they had done prior films, so they had that kind of comfort and in their process on set. But I think when directors make that jump and suddenly they're working with, you know, more like A-list name actors, that's a big part of the guidance we offer. Is just it's different, and it becomes, you know, you just kind of, it changes the dynamic on set. And I think that's something that sometimes they have to adapt to or get used to, that, you know, there's, yeah, it just kind of shifts the energy and the dynamic there. So I think we often kind of do some hand holding through that in terms of just how to navigate, I guess, that.
Okay.
Yeah, like brand new younger actors or, you know, actors maybe with no training. Or like in Martha's case, Martha was literally casting friends and family in her first couple, you know, movies. That's going to be a very different dynamic than like bringing Michael Shannon, you know, into the picture, who's been doing this for decades and has sort of like process that he's, you know, learned that he needs to do a really great job. So I think, yeah, part of that is sort of hand holding through that.
Yeah, and that's I'm glad you mentioned that. As the actors on set, like Shea Wiggum, amazing talent and veteran actor, and he worked on both films. That's why I bring him up. And such different roles. I don't think you could get any more different, really, between the two. And he nailed them both, of course, as he's shown us in the past. Now, when he's on set, from your standpoint, sorry about that. From your standpoint as producers, how much of like you said with the actors coming in and helping kind of guide the filmmakers, what do you see that a lot with the actors that you choose? Does it help you with the choice of actors? You know, I know it's mostly directors coming in, but again, as producers, your guidance is very important. So does, you know, maybe you working in the industry, something like that, like getting somebody like Shea to be in both of your movies, does that help? Like, is that your kind of connection, I guess is what I'm trying to say, coming in and saying, listen, this actor will give you a great performance and
yeah, it's always, it depends on To the Stars, for example. That was one where Laura and I both brought in relationships. So I was friends with Shea Wiggum, actually friends with Shea via Mike Shannon, who I'm close with. And he agreed to come in and do it. And then Laura brought in Tony Hale, who she's friends with, you know, their father, and Jordana Spiro. But it's not always like that. I mean, yeah, there's certain, like, we definitely have established relationships with a handful of people where they're like on our list to, like, we love working with these people. They're amazing, you know, talents. And if we can find roles for them in anything that we do, we're probably going to continue to do that. And you know, suggest someone like Shea Wiggum to a director, and like, I don't know that anyone's going to argue, you know, with that.
Now I just kind of switch gears back to producing. Now I tend to talk about producing a lot because that was my path, and the reason I say that was I went to film school as well. I went to Full Sail University.
Oh yeah.
So when going that route, I, of course, before I started was like, I'm going to be a writer, director, you know, and that was the mindset of everybody going in. And then as we got out, it was like, oh no, this is my path clearly, or this. And I've talked to a lot of people who didn't go to film school as well, who were sort of the same way. Like they were like, all right, once I got on set, once I started PAing, I kind of found my path. And I know we talked about that, but you both did ultimately go to school, and, you know, to learn filmmaking. What would you say? What would be your advice? Whether it's either try it out or go to film school. You know, what do you guys think? You know, like,
I think just getting on set is the best. I mean, I went to UCLA, but I didn't study film. So I think, I mean, there is definite value in film school in terms of you just have your hands on cameras from day one and you're making movies, and there's so much experimentation and, you know, learning that comes with that. And also I think the community you take away from film school is really strong. Like I know a number of people who went to North Carolina School of the Arts we're close with, and, you know, these groups that then kind of continue on and work together. But the flip side, I think just getting on sets, like I wasn't really on set till I was, you know, just out of college, but immediately you start to see what the different departments are doing. And there are so many little niches you just may not know exist, that I think being exposed to all that is really, key and exciting because it can take you in different directions that you didn't see necessarily. And also I think just working in the industry, it's all about relationships. So as soon as you're on those first sets, that's how you meet people that are going to lead to your next job. Like it's, that's kind of how you bounce from production to production, if that's what you want to do. So I think just, getting out there and getting in the field is really the best path.
I agree. I think if you're fortunate enough where you have the money to go to school and you feel like you might need a good foundation and structure, it could be good. But I think, I agree. Like, it's absolutely not necessary to work in this industry at all. It's all about how hard you work and making those connections.
Yeah, no.
Someone like many years ago said something to me about this business is all about just like those who work long enough to succeed, like work hard enough and long enough to succeed. Like it really is just a test of endurance, and you have to really love it and really be committed to it. And that means, Kristin and I both interned for a lot of years. And then we were PAs and assistants, like some really grueling work. And I think for me, I was always like, okay, this is like my boot camp. This is my, version of film school maybe. And so you have to kind of go into it knowing, obviously, having boundaries because you don't want to be abused, but like kind of knowing that you're really, it's a lot of hard work, but if you really endure and kind of push through that, that's where you will progress and you will eventually be making your own movies and those things.
Yeah. I think one thing I'll add to that is I think there's also, you have to be careful, like going to film school and thinking, like you said, what you want to do and then spend 3 or 4 years or however long, like working on that, and then you actually step foot on set and realize, oh my God, that is so not what I want to do. I want to do this other thing. And you have to kind of rectify, like, could I have just spent the last 3 years working on set and figuring that out and honing that craft instead? Because when I first started out, I did not want to produce. Like, I thought it seemed very overwhelming to me. I had zero connections in the industry to financing, to talent. Like it seemed like a pipe dream to me. But I didn't discover until I really started to like dig in and work my way up that that's where my, skill set lies. And now I'm like so thankful that, I discovered that, because I can't picture myself doing anything else.
Oh, that's great. And I do agree. I sort of had it both ways. Like I got out of school and then I moved straight to LA, and I just found myself getting more, as much as I love those connections, that networking system that I gained from school. I was sort of on my own when I moved out to LA, and it was just a matter of doing it. It was a matter of getting out there and doing it. Yeah. That's what I try to convey. I say, if you go, great, you get technical know-how, but you'll also do that if you jump on set. So I appreciate your answer on that.
Yeah.
Now, with everything going on right now, it's kind of new, it's kind of crazy for everyone. But as producers, how are you with future productions on hold and things like that? How are you kind of keeping it together, or what innovative ways maybe are you trying to hold things and kind of progress things as we go through this?
Yeah. We're focused on, we're both just looking at you like, because we don't know.
The bird's out.
We have no idea when it's going to be safe to go, back on set and shoot. And then even when it is, it's going to look likely very, very differently than it did before. So there's going to be like a mix of, there's a learning curve and us trying to prepare for what that is, that new world. But also just trying not to obsess about that too much and just looking at like, okay, what can we do? Because as producers, we're responsible for developing each project and actually getting it off the ground. So for us, we're focused on that phase of our projects and maybe taking on a few more projects than we normally would, because we know we've got the time to develop, all these things.
Yeah, I think right now for us, often as a producer, it's cyclical because you're kind of moving the ball along in different projects in different phases. For us, it just so happens that we just released these 2 films these past couple weeks. So we're kind of in the new life cycle. So we happen to be in that phase right now where we have new projects that we're casting and financing. So it's, in a way, it's a blessing because we weren't about to go right into production. I guess we had one that was probably going to shoot May-ish. So maybe we were going to, but yeah, generally speaking, that is work we can still be doing as far as making talent offers and, sending script to financiers and things. But it's tricky because things we're reading about, even what sets may look like if and when they reopen while this is still going on. And it's tough because on the one, I mean, for indie films, there are a lot of like budget implications to it because it's, you know, it means doing things slower and having fewer bodies on sets. You're having to bring crew in waves and just things that are really like, as you're trying to get your head around, you know, indie budgets are so hard as is. And these are things that would obviously cost more. But then the flip side is, in a way, maybe indie films will benefit because it's all about like smaller scale production. So you can't have massive crowd scenes necessarily and things that indies don't usually, you know, frequently have anyway. So maybe there's a world in which like indies actually will be the ones to thrive when production initially resumes, because we can kind of operate within these like new protocols and have that mindset, I guess, on how to like adjust and be kind of lean and mean. But yeah, within all that, it's all just speculation right now. We're all kind of scratching our heads and not really knowing.
Well, I appreciate your honesty on that, especially because that's it's important. And a lot of you know, I know indie filmmakers and stuff. They need to hear that. They need to hear. They're not the only ones, you know.
Yeah. Well, and honestly, I mean, if you're a young filmmaker out there right now and you have a movie you can go make with 5 of your friends, like nothing big is shooting right now. So if there's a way to do that safely when things resume, it's a great time to do it probably, because distributors are going to need content. Like nothing, you know, make things while you can if you know if it's safe to do so.
Yeah, I that was something I talked to quite a few filmmaker friends about. And, you know, right now, why don't you use this time to write or make something or just put something together? You know, take the time to be creative. You know, you never know when you get a chance like this again. Yeah. Hopefully never, you know.
Right. I know we're excited about all the scripts that we hope will emerge from this time, like from writer friends and people who are all just holed up, like you said, and kind of, you know, utilizing the time to hopefully be creative. And
so I really appreciate you guys coming on, and I like to end things on sort of a fun note, just to kind of get ideas and such. I'd like to ask you both, if you could produce any movie throughout time, if you could have been a producer on it, what movie would you choose?
When Harry Met Sally.
Oh, that's a great choice.
I would give anything to work with that cast.
That is a fantastic choice.
That is tough. I think I'm going to say The Princess Bride just because I love it.
Ooh, that's a good one.
It's one of my all-time favorites.
Well, you guys work together because it's both Rob Reiner films. I mean, right?
Yeah, that's true. That's wild.
That's
I really appreciate you guys coming on and talking to me and taking the time out. And I just want to say how much I really enjoyed your films. 44 pages. Check it out, everybody. Make sure you go check out To the Stars. And make sure you're checking out the Quarry, among others. Look up their IMDb's, Laura and Kristin's IMDb's, because they're filled with fantastic movies.
Thank you.
Thank you guys so much. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right, and you guys take care and stay safe.
You too.
Likewise, yeah.
Thank you.
Strong.
Bye now.
Bye.
Bye.